Show me the money. Welcome to the First Home Buyers Show. Now, tell me this. Does it worry you about where you are going to get the money to buy your first home? Do you think that it's impossible? Do you lay awake thinking this is never something I can achieve? Well, I can tell you right now, there is government and lender advantages to you, and there's up to $60,000 that I've uncovered that I believe that you don't have to pay if you get it right. So without any further ado, let's roll those credits because I want to show you how it's going to cost you less to get into your first home than you ever believe.
It's the First Home Buyers Show, where first home buyers go to watch their wealth grow. And here's your host, Jane Slack-Smith.
Hello, it is Jane here, and yes, I want to take you through so many things today because it's all about the money, and today we're going to discuss the money from top to bottom. Now, some pretty exciting developments have happened in the last week or so. The government has come out and they have told us about what caps they're going to be putting on different city and regional areas throughout Australia to allow people to purchase into the first home loan deposit scheme and take advantage of that when it comes about on the 1st of the 1st, 2020. Now, a lot of interesting data has come out. Now, just to remind you, there is some eligibility as well. So if you're a single person, you have to earn less than $125,000. And if you're in a couple, you have to earn over or below $200,000. So I think that's, quite probable and possible that a lot of people are going to fit in that space. Now, obviously, you can't have owned a home before to access this. So why is this so important? Well, what normally happens is the bank wants you to be able to put in a bit of hurt money. They want you to put up a deposit. They're going to give you a large amount of money that they're going to trust that you'll pay off over the next 30 years, typically. Now, what this means is they want you to put in a deposit. So they want you typically to put in 20% the value of the property. Now, if you don't, they say, well, there's a bit of a risk to us, so we're going to get insurance to cover us in case you default. And just to be extra nice, we're going to make you pay for the insurance. Now, it is a once-off fee. However, it can be quite hefty. So what the lenders do is they actually then say, well, you could put in a 5% deposit, or you could put in a 10% deposit or a 15% deposit, but anything less than 20%, we're going to charge you that fee. Now, the government has stepped in and said, how can we make this easier for people? What if we guarantee the difference between their 5% deposit and the 20% that the government wants, so that 15%. So if they want that difference, then they are going to guarantee that for you, but you have to meet their eligibility. Now, the government's put about $500 million up. They reckon that's going to be about 10,000 first home buyers that they're going to be guaranteeing this in this scheme. And it is expected at this stage that it could run out very, very quickly. I've seen numbers that have said that there's going to be so many people ready for this that it will be exhausted within the first 6 weeks. So we're talking mid-February. Now, here we are, First Home Buyer Show, episode 4, and we are looking at November, December, and then January. So we've really got less than 8 weeks to get you sorted. Now, is it such a big deal if you don't have access to this first home loan deposit scheme? And the answer is, well, not really, because you can still get loans with a 5% deposit. You just have to pay the mortgage insurance. Now, the mortgage insurance can be huge with a 5% deposit, especially if we go to some of the caps, and I'll show you some of the caps in a moment. But if it is that large, that amount of money, the banks do make you pay that to cover them, but the one nice thing that they do is they say you can put this on top of your loan. So you don't have to come up with the cash. Now, I've done some numbers, and I'm just going to share my screen here with you. I've done some numbers based on what the lenders, so let me just show you what the caps are in different areas. And you can see here, just to check it out for the moment, what can you see? It's kind of working, isn't it, right? So we've got $700,000 in Sydney, so that's not going to get you a very big property in Sydney. And what we've also got is $700,000 for major regional centres. Now, for the rest of New South Wales, the limit is a purchase price of $450,000. Now, we jump over Victoria and we're at $600,000. And you can see there that in Victoria and in Melbourne, $600,000 is actually going to get you a house within 20 k's of the CBD. Whereas if you're looking at $700,000 cap for Sydney and major regionals, you're looking at Newcastle and Wollongong on the Central Coast. $600,000 is definitely going to get you into Geelong as well. Now, the other areas in Victoria is the 375. And then we go to Queensland. Now, you know, the Brisbane, this is going to get you a property in Brisbane, a house in Brisbane, but once again in those outer suburbs, so $475,000. Other areas, a little bit more generous, $400,000. Western Australia, 400. We've got other areas, 300,000. South Australia, 400. Other areas, 250. Tasmania, Hobart, 400. And other areas, 300,000. ACT, 500,000. And the Northern Territory, we're looking at a difference of $375,000. So as you can see, there's actually quite a lot of scope for you. Now, if you're in Sydney, unfortunately, this is probably not going to help you that much, because we know in Sydney, even the median house price for units within 5 k's is like over $1 million. So what I need you to be aware of is there is money up for grabs. Now, I did the numbers on this and I took the figures for Victoria, and I'm just going to share you with my secret software here. Don't tell anyone I have shared this with you, but this is kind of the secret mortgage broking software. So I've done these numbers for Victoria, and here I'm just looking at the state charges. Now, if you can see that, I'm going to zoom in a little bit further so you can. If we click off first home buyers concession, if we go up to the $600,000 that is possible under the cap in Melbourne, there's normally state charges of stamp duty of $32,692. We put on the first home buyers concession, $31,000 of that comes back to you. Now, if I jump over here and look at the mortgage insurance, and I do the same thing for Victoria, and let's try, I don't know, any bank. Commonwealth Bank's the biggest bank. We look at that $600,000 and we put in a 5% deposit. $570,000 is going to be our loan amount. If we click on this, you can see that mortgage insurance is going to be about $25,000. So this gives us a real idea around, the different lenders as well have different premiums based on all of their different amounts that they put through to the bank. So you can see here, Adelaide Bank, if you had to pay mortgage insurance, there'd be an extra $29,000 that would actually go on top of your loan. Now, $29,000 of the lender's mortgage insurance, we've got the state taxes of $31,000. So there's $60,000 that you don't have to pay if you qualify for the first home loan deposit scheme. So this is big and breaking news. So the question is, and if you've been over to the First House Buyer group, Facebook group, you'll see a lot of people in there saying, what is the biggest concern? And getting the money together seems to be one of the biggest issues that people are facing. So what I thought I'd do today is I'm going to show you the money and where to get the money. So first up for grabs, $60,000 is available for you. But how do you get that 5% that you're going to need? Now, $700,000 in New South Wales and major regionals in New South Wales, that's obviously $35,000. In Victoria, in Melbourne, it is obviously $30,000 if the cap's $600,000. So it gives you an idea. If you're buying around $500,000, 5%, is around $25,000, obviously. So, this is the amount of money that you need to save. So I want to assist you in understanding how to get that money together and how the lenders are going to assess you. Now, first and foremost, you need to know how much you actually need to live off and how much you are actually earning, because the difference could actually form your savings. So first, I want to talk about understanding what your actually expenses are. Now, I'm just going to share this with you. I've developed a calculator, here, and you can access this through investorstoys.com.au. It's called the portfolio calculator, because a lot of people always ask me, how do you actually work out how much you need to have in property to retire? And it's an age-old question. So I've got this how many properties calculator, but the first few tabs of this calculator are really handy as well, because it allows you to work out how much you actually need and with the buffer to live. So for instance here, I've got here accommodation per month, rent $2,500, food, utilities, transport, insurance. That's what it equates to per year. Now, you're going to cover your basic living costs. This is how much you need to earn after tax to be able to do that. But I really suggest you also go in and just give yourself a bit of a buffer. So, maybe you want 3 months of buffer on your whole basic costs. So therefore, after tax, you're going to need about $56,000. Now, we do know that, life's kind of, worth living. So there's extra things you want to, maybe some entertainment or education, holiday money to put aside, gifts, little luxuries, others, and clothing. So all of a sudden, your basic living costs, they start increasing a bit. And I would still suggest that you consider having, at least a buffer in place for you to cover at least 1 month of your accommodation, and preferably 3. So this is a after tax income of $88,000. So I encourage you to go over the calculator and just work out exactly how much you need to live off. Now, here's the thing. When we actually look at how lenders assess you, they assess you in a couple of ways. They firstly assess your income and expenses, and they can work out how much that you can borrow. But there's another thing. They then look at the money you have as a deposit. So often I work with people where they have a great income and, they have, low credit cards and they don't have any debt, but they don't have a deposit. So they might be able to borrow $700,000, but their deposit's only $10,000. So they're restricted in what they can actually purchase. Now, that might be you. So you need to understand that there's 3 things at play here. The first is your income, and let's talk about how you can increase that. The second is your expenses, and we're going to talk about how you can reduce that. And the third is your savings. So how much do you actually need? Now, we've just looked at the calculator to work out, how much your living expenses might mean. So you can go and use this calculator and just work out, what is available to you? What is the capacity for you to save some money? Now, if you don't have any capacity to save some money at the moment based on your current income and your current expenses, that's when we have to increase the income, reduce the expenses so we can increase your savings. And that's going to get you ready for the 1st of the 1st, 2020. Okay, so let's talk about the ways that the lenders are going to assess you and what you do. Now, I'm going to share with you once again, this is one of the documents that we send as a fact founder that goes out to all of our mortgage clients, and we're just trying to get a feeling for what are your goals, what are you trying to achieve, the basic information about what your credit history is if there is any issues. However, we always do purchase the credit file on your behalf, and we purchase it without making an inquiry on your credit file, because we want to make sure that you're set up with the best opportunity as possible to go through this. Now, obviously, there's all the information that you need to know about your personal details, your employment details, and if you're self-employed, we need extra information. And we jump down here and we're always looking at, what are the assets that you have, some liabilities that you have. And if you're thinking of purchasing a property, what are, your kind of estimates of what you can afford and where you can be? Now, this is what I really want to concentrate on. The lenders have got really determined in going through everyone's monthly budget and basic budget and what they spend their money on. So, in some lenders' applications, there's up to 23 different lines of where we have to fill in what you spend on, water or contents or groceries or medical insurance. I mean, you can see here, child support, childcare, Tires, fuel. So they expect us as a minimum to fill all of this in. Now, this is the level of detail that they're going to. Now, so it's really important that you're just familiar with the process. So you speak to a mortgage broker or you go to a bank. This is what the kind of data they're going to get from you. And the important reason that you get and start talking to a mortgage broker or lender up front and first is because they'll be able to assess you based on your borrowing capacity, so you know what you can borrow based on your income and your expenses, but they can also say, well, based on your deposit, this is actually what you can purchase. So there might be a gap, and if there's a gap, that's what we have to fill. So this knowledge is power. So when we think about the process of going through and buying your first home, you don't leave the lending to the last moment, especially not if you've just been successful at auction. It's about being part of the conversation up front. So I really encourage you to speak to your broker, speak to us if you'd like, Investors Choice Mortgages, but speak to a broker and get this assessment done. It is so important. Okay, so let me move on to the next thing about lenders. And I think it's, once again, it's really important to understand that the lenders at the moment are being, super vigilant on looking at your numbers. Now, we had a mortgage client and an application that we put in a month or so ago now, and we put down all of those expenses, everything that the person had been spending. And with the forensic intensity that these assessors are using at the moment, they went through individual items on the savings statement. Now, with technology, this is getting easier and easier, but individual items on the savings statements. And what they found was there was a regular payment every Friday of $25. Now, they came back to us and said, you've got an undeclared debt here. There's a repayment of $25 every single month every single week that's going ahead. Please explain because, you haven't declared this. So we went back to the client and said, what's going on? And they said, that's my Parma and pint I have at lunch on Friday with my partner. That is the level of integrity or searches that they're doing on your application. So just be aware of that, and just be aware of those extra little expenses that are popping up. Those extra little expenses are expenses that are possibly getting you away from your home. So if you could possibly look at those expenses, which we'll come to in a moment, it's an opportunity for you to get into your home sooner. Okay, so, the thing is, you may not have the capacity to create that deposit for yourself. It might be something that isn't possible, and you could potentially use your parental guarantee to assist you. Now, if you jump over to the First House Buyer Facebook page, I've just done an entire lesson on how to use parental guarantees and the risks and rewards of doing that, and how you can get your parents' property released as soon as possible. Good news is they don't take the control over the entire property, just the amount that you need. But it is an alternative to getting a deposit. But we all like doing things by ourselves, right? So let's look at how we could do that next. So I think the next thing that you need to understand is just understanding your expenses. Now, one of the things, and if you would like to have your borrowing capacity and future spending plan assessed by my team at Investors Choice Mortgages, I'll put in the details where you can make a time for that. But I believe in so much in actually assisting you in getting to the point where you can actually do this yourself, that I have this course that I've created. So anyone who does make an appointment to work with the Investors Choice team and book an appointment and complete the appointment, you get access to this course. Now, this course is worth $495. The reason I'm telling you that is that a lot of people in the Facebook page, the First House Buyer page, said that they were having trouble and confused about the process of buying a property. And I've set it out here really easily. Now, Simone, thank you, Simone, who made an appointment and had a chat to our team last week. She's been through this course and she was just absolutely overwhelmed by how much content's there. As I said, I used to sell this course for $495. If you make an appointment and turn up to the appointment, and we can assist you, we're going to give you access straight away. So as you can see, we talk about goals and budgeting, and I'm going to come back to this at a future stage. But today what we're also talking about is understanding, all the things that you need to go through this set it component of our framework. And the set it component is this, getting your credit in check, getting your budget set up, understanding how much you can afford to buy. And there's a number of different models that you can get money from that is going to allow you to be able to make this contribution. Obviously, we've got the government grants and stamp duty concessions. Someone could give you money as gift or your parental guarantee, or you have savings. And, I give you exercises, etc., all through this, but it's really important that you understand exactly the process of where you can get the money and how you can do it. And obviously we go into quite a lot of details of afterwards as well. So that's my gift to you if you would like to make an appointment with us and just have an understanding of exactly what your costs are and what you can do. So let's move on now, because what I want to talk to you about is how you can increase your income, because we can look at all of the things that affect you. And the reason I showed you that course material is there's a whole section in there about knowing your expenses. Now, one of the things that I did, and I still carry around a little notebook with me, but one of the things that I did was have a little notebook in my bag, and I wrote down everything that I spent for 2 weeks. And I was absolutely shocked. Is this a magazine here, or flowers for home, or a book here, maybe a coffee, or I forgot to make my lunch. That all added up. And just getting a perspective on the costs that come and go out of your life is really important. So part of that course, I really encourage you to go and get a notebook and start filling in your expenses. Just track them for 2 weeks. I think you'll be absolutely astounded. Now, let's go in and talk about how to increase your income. So increasing your income, reducing your expenses, and increasing your deposit. That's what our goal is. Now, obviously, the government's going to throw money at you, and we do have the first home loan deposit scheme coming up. We do have grants, and we also have the stamp duty concessions that I showed you a little earlier. So if I just have a quick little look at this, if you put remind below, I'm going to obviously send you, remind you when we go live next time, but I'm also going to send you the first home buyers guide to all the concessions and grants throughout the country. Now, there's some really weird stuff here. In the ACT, it's based on how many kids you have. In Queensland, they do things their own way. Up in Northern Territory, you can actually have a first home buyers grant every 2 years if you go out of the state and come back. It's kind of strange. In Western Australia, depending on what parallel of latitude you're on, you get different grants. So I understand how confusing this can be, but there are grants available to you. So go ahead, put remind below. I'll give you a copy of that Australian Guide to First Home Buyers Grants and Concessions. Now, know, as part of our community and what I have seen in teaching investors over the last 15 years, established houses, not units, and not new, is what gets the biggest growth. And my goal for you is to use all of these grants with as little of your own money as possible, get into the property, have the property in the right area so it is right for renters who want to live there, and the capital growth that you can experience for the next 20 or 30 years. So I'm not talking about units at all, ever, and I'm definitely not talking about new properties or house or land packages or buying off the plan. Not on. So let's go to how to increase your income. There's a couple of ways. Ask. A very good friend of mine wrote a book on how to increase your income, and it was how to get a pay rise. Now, there may not be the capacity in the current environment to get a pay rise, but start the conversation and go to your boss and say, is there a number of KPIs or stretch targets or something that I could achieve that over the next 3, 6 or 12 months, because I'm planning on buying a home, that could allow me to get a pay rise. Just starting that conversation is really, really important. And the other thing is, my boss used to say to me, I can't wait for you to get a mortgage because I think you'll be tied to me for life, which terrified me. But the reality was, a lot of employers like their employees to kind of be a bit tied to them as well. So the fact that you're actually actively taking them on the journey with you and, buying your first property is great. Now, one of the things that my boss used to say to me every month was, how do I get paid a lot more than you and you get more in the pay packet? And that was a little trick that I'll teach you in the course called tax variation when the property becomes an investment property. So the thing is, if you have the opportunity, go to work, ask for a pay rise, or ask for KPIs that can assist you in getting a pay rise in the future. The other thing is check out what your value is worth on the market. Now, if you are working in corporate, and I had a friend recently who did this, she went out to one of the major groups, consulting groups, to find out what she was worth on the market, and she was being paid about 50%. Now, she'd started with them, had been with them for many, many years, and she'd got some really good pay rises. She was on what she felt was a very healthy income. But when she checked her value in the market, it was a lot more. Now, I know a lot of people who potentially aren't in corporate roles can't just jump along and find out, what their income is worth elsewhere, and there may not be possible, but it's something you can check out, and especially if you're under regulations on your hourly rate, etc. Okay, so the next thing is potentially you can get a second job. Now, I know this sounds a bit scary, and it could be possible or it may not be possible, but we're talking about getting your savings up in the next 3 to 6 months. So if getting a second job and maybe working a couple of nights or doing an extra few shifts on the weekend means that you can get to your savings a whole lot sooner and then get into your first house a whole lot sooner, then well worth it. And I had one of my mortgage clients a few years ago, we did the assessment for them. They had a great borrowing capacity. They didn't have the savings. And the husband, who was a nurse, went and pulled all these extra shifts, and within 8 weeks, they had that deposit already. So, it might be a little bit of a switch, and it might, take you away from your social life a bit, but this is a long-term commitment. We're talking about getting you $1 million in equity by the time you retire, or, in the next 15 to 20 years. But by the time you retire, well and truly done. So this is really worth it. Now, the next thing is you could actually start your own business as a bit of a side hustle. Now, know that the lenders are not going to allow you to take that income into account when assessing your borrowing capacity for 2 years. It has to be consistent. If there's more of a difference of 20% over the 2 years, they take the lower year. There's all these different policies, but it will help you build a deposit. Now, I have a lot of friends that are selling, have little shops on Amazon, and there's a number of courses and experts who teach how to do it. There's a lot of people who've spent a lot of money on doing courses and buying a lot of products and importing them, and it's going nowhere. And there's other people who have done it and followed the bouncing ball of really great educators who've shown how to do it, and they've done it themselves, and they're making money. So just be aware that, if they require you to put in a whole amount of money and you can't, through your research, show the upside, then it might be actually using up your deposit. But you could be selling things on eBay or on Gumtree, or your local Facebook group for your local community is a great way to do it as well. Now, last week, my son sold his BB-8 robot for $30. Hurt my heart because we bought it for $80 2 years ago and he's hardly ever used it. But it was valuable to someone else and wasn't to him. So he's in a process of selling down his Lego so that he can actually make some money and save some money. Does he have a saving plan? We're still talking about that. But the thing is that have a look around your house and have a look at what's available. What's not of value to you now could be value to someone else. Now, as a kid, my son had the Duplo farm animal Lego, and I bought that for $150 secondhand on eBay. He sold it on eBay 5 years later for $180. So there you go. Appreciation, Lego goes up. So just be aware that there might be money that you can actually get that could assist you as well. As I said, if you're going to do this long term and create a business, the lenders won't look at this as income for 2 years, but it will help your deposit. Okay, what else do I have? Maybe you could turn your hobby into some income. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever used Airtasker, but I use Airtasker all the time. So, for instance, I put a job on Airtasker and said, look, I really want to learn portrait photography. I know I'm going to spend like $300 for a day course with a group of 15 people and maybe not get all my questions answered. I'm prepared to pay and I think it was like $70 an hour for 2 hours, $150 for 2 hours to get just the fundamentals that I needed. And I had, I think, 30 people actually reply within the first hour, and I had to turn it off. And I ended up having one of the professors who teaches photography at one of the universities teach me. Now, I have also used Airtasker to get someone to come and mount a TV into a wall. The guy was doing it as a job during the day and he was moonlighting at night. I've had someone as a driver drive me around the vineyards with my friends at $50 an hour. And, so he was really happy. I was happy. I wasn't paying $250 for 4 people, each for 4 people to be picked up on a bus and driven around. More money to spend on the wine. So, there may be some things that you have as hobbies that you can use. Or maybe you have some really important technical skills. Now, there's a website called clarity.fm, and it's where entrepreneurs and business builders can go to get advice from really clever, done-it-already people. So, for instance, I was looking at it the other day about getting some advice on, it was on a program that I was developing, and I looked on there, and the person who had developed a real estate-based program for the equivalent of, realestate.com.au in the States, he was their chief program designer. He was on there. Now, he charges $8 a minute to answer your question, but he was answering questions. And I have a girlfriend on there who spent so many years teaching people in the States how to buy blocks of units and rehab them, which is renovate them, and then sell them based on a higher yield. Now, she's now into shares, but she still has that capability, and she has her details up there, and it's not uncommon for her to make $200 a week for someone saying, look, I want, 30 minutes of your time to answer these questions on how to do it. So if you've got some skills, clarity.fm is somewhere you can look as well, or Airtasker. Okay, so this is different ways you can increase your income. Let's talk about reducing your expenses. All right, you're going to get that book. You're going to write down everything over the next 2 weeks or so, and you're going to find out where all your expenses are. So I really want you to have the understanding that this is a short-term savings plan, but if it becomes a habit, really, you're going to do this forever, because I did this, and, and every now and then I still do it when I feel that I'm probably spending a little bit much. But, just writing things down and getting clarity of where your dollars are going can be so illuminating. So first and foremost, I suggest you do that. Some of the things that you might look at. Now, I remember doing a lending assessment when I had my mortgage broking hat on years ago, and I was about 3 years ago, and there's a couple so keen on buying their first investment property, and I went through all of their borrowing capacity and said, look, you're about $30 a month short. You're paying $40 a month for Foxtel. If you got rid of that, you'd be fine. And they went and had a really deep conversation about it, and they came back and went, in actual fact, no, we're not prepared to give up Foxtel. No investment property. And the property in the price range we were looking at would have been up now about a $200,000 gain for them. So no, there can be some sacrifices. So yes, you're going to hear things about, take your coffee to work, or don't buy a coffee. Honestly, I just went to Officeworks and bought some of the disposable, and Woolies has the disposable mugs. And when I go to work, I often just make my own coffee and walk to work with a coffee. So, saving a bit of money there. Look, it's $4 a day, potentially. Taking your lunch, no, blah, blah, boring. There's other things you can do, such as maybe not go out for dinner, but go back to the 70s when my folks used to do progressive dinner parties, or bring a pot and everyone would share. And, it's a major way to cut down expenses. Often you get a better meal, and, you're not kicked out of the restaurant at the end of the night. So think about, rather than going out and seeing people, what can you do in-house? And then there's that gym membership. Now, I know, in the beginning of the year, everyone joins up to the gym and then potentially don't continue. If it is at all possible for you to go out and enjoy nature and potentially even do workouts at home, consider that. Nike has an incredible app that has essentially a free, a workout on every single part of your body you could ever want. So maybe there's not the necessity to go to the gym. And often a lot of the community councils in a lot of areas actually have like a free exercise, getting to life kind of activity as well. So check that out. What else do I have on here? Oh, okay. Don't pay full price. Now, I very, very rarely pay full price for anything. And this is as easy as it is. JB Hi-Fi, they want you to purchase a laptop monitor or screen or keyboard. So I will always say, what's the best price? And they never, ever hesitate. They pull out their thing and they go, oh, I could possibly do this. And once they've given me their best price, I'm like, oh, how much less for cash? Bang, bang. And I'm often getting 5 to 10% off those prices. I was in a shop the other day and we were looking at some shoes for my son. There was the normal prices up there, and the lady said, I'm going to go get these shoes for you. And I said, oh, tell me how much those ones are first. And she went, oh, well, today there's a secret discount of 10%. I was like, oh, okay. And she went and got the shoes. Now, if I hadn't asked what the price was, I bet you I didn't get the secret discount of 10%. So please just ask, because it is extraordinary. Now, one of the things that I always recommend to my mortgage clients is that they get, death and trauma insurance. It's a horrible thing. We don't talk about it, let's face it. But one of the groups that I recommend do this give you an extra benefits awards card. So they've gone through and they've worked out that if you use the extra benefits awards card for the groceries and tyres and petrol and all the things that you can, 5, 10, 8% off, then you can actually save the same amount as the premium per year that you would be paying for them. So it's a bit of a no-brainer, right? You get all of that coverage. Now, I know when you're young and you're caught up in expenses of kids and everything, then it's hard to think about insurance. But just recently, one of my clients rang up to thank me. He was riding on his way to a spin class and his bike slipped. He broke his hand in a number of places, and we'd put in place that insurance, and he got like $5,000 to help him out whilst he was homesick. So, it really can count. But I use the extra benefits card that these guys give me. So I get 5% off all my Woolworths shops. And, things like Suzanne's, I get 8% off, and I get 10% off Cotton On, and, money off different things. So just be aware that there's so many ways to get discounts on what the normal things that you'd be paying for. So I'm not saying go out and buy new things. I'm saying we'll go to Woolies. Why not get an extra 5% off? Now, on a $200 shop, that's $10. But here's the thing. That's a saving. That money needs to go into your savings. It doesn't go back into your wallet. Be aware of what you're saving. So I'm always saving funds. So you might, for instance, I'm a member of Amway. Now, I like the vitamins. I don't sell their vitamins. I don't go and sell their cleaning products or anything. And I know people have made amazing businesses of doing that. But as a group, Amway is probably one of the biggest single groups in Australia, and they have incredible bargaining power, and they have the most insane Hertz deals. So when I ring up and I use my Hertz Amway membership number, the people on the other end of the phone go, oh my God, I work for Hertz, and you get a better discount than me. Now, you may not use Hertz that often, and you may not need vitamins, but for $60 a year or whatever it is to join Amway, I get a Hertz at a lot price discount, but I also have no waivers of excess. I have no excess I have to pay. So there's all these extra benefits. So just look around the normal things that you're going to spend your money on, where you can save those expenses. So other things that I've got in place is just be aware of things that you're spending money on. Now, I was listening to a marketing video the other day, and this guy has like a BP, and he has at the front of the shop, he's got these chocolates sitting there, and it says, do you want to for the price of one, or do you want a discount of this? And the person who was a marketing person said, oh, that's really interesting. You've got this just here, is it worth your while? And he's like, yes. And he's making $20,000 a month from selling a chocolate that's sitting there in front of people whilst they're buying their petrol. That is insane. So just think about, who's marketing to you, and where are you picking up those little discretionary things that you possibly don't need? And writing that down in that document is going to be so worth your while, because you're going to know what to do. So other things I have listed down: buying movie tickets in bulk, potentially making birthday and Christmas presents, or actually putting some thought in and making an experience for someone. I know, often I speak to family and friends and say, what would you like for your birthday? I'm like, just like an hour of your time so we can just sit down and chat. I'm like, really? maybe I should be ringing them more often. But, sometimes this is something more personal that people would really enjoy. So just think about the gifts, and Christmas is coming up. Maybe there's something that you can start doing now, making coconut ice, for instance, or beautiful cordials, or something that can go under the tree that tells people that you've thought of them and what they've really liked. Now, what else have I got? Maybe you don't need your car, so maybe you could take public transport, or have a go-get car and just pay for when you need it. Now, I live near the inner city, and on 4 corners around me are go-get cars, and I have a car that I use twice a week. So it could make sense for me that, in actual fact, it'd be a lot cheaper than rego and fuel and insurance and everything to just have a go-get car. So just think about these different things and the expenses that you have. Okay, I've got some other things. Use your library. When I found out how much I was spending on books and magazines, I went and joined the library. Now, this is 20 years ago, and I think I've converted all of my friends and family to it. On the library now is insane. There is, so LinkedIn recently bought lynda.com, which gives you courses. So I've done courses on Excel, I've done courses on photography, I've done courses on marketing and video, obviously not always so good, but this can cost you $200 a year for membership. I know Melbourne Library, if you're a member of Melbourne Library, you get it for free. I know that they have all the latest books now that are available online, so you can read it on your Kindle or your iPad or whatever. The magazines as well. I go and, I like the tech magazines. I go and borrow the tech magazines or go and sit in there. The libraries these days, 3D printing, they have amazing resources. So go in there and if there's a new book that's coming out and they haven't got it in, ask for it. They'll buy it, and your name's first on the list if you have a dirt phobia that I know some people do about libraries. But make your library your friend. And the other thing is, sign up for things like Weekend Notes, where there's free activities every weekend going on in the city or regional areas. I know growing up in Dubbo, and we didn't obviously have a lot of money at all, but we were always doing things. At one stage, I think my mother knocked on the door of the Ambos and asked if they would teach my sister and I first aid, and we were there every Saturday for an hour for a month learning how to do first aid. So there's so many things that you can do, and expenses and activities that you don't have to spend money on. So we're talking about expenses down, income up. How about savings? So let me tell you about some savings tips. All right, first of all, if you actually are saving, know what you're saving for. So I told you before, feel free to give us a call at Investor's Choice. I'll put the link in the notes above so that you can click on it and make a time that's convenient for you. And if you show up for the call, I'll give you that $495 course. But the more important thing is understand what amount you have to have. Understand what your borrowing capacity allows you to be able to buy at. Because if you only need $20,000 and you've already got it, or you're $1,000 off, maybe you can start moving on to the source it part of our five-step framework that is actually going to get you in to start looking for a property. Because I want you to be one of those people that if you have the eligibility, you can buy the 1st 2020 and take absolute maximum use of that, because it's going to run out really quickly and it won't come back in until the next financial year. So my goal is to get as many of you ready to be able to be active for that. And you won't know until you know how much savings you have. And maybe you only have 8 weeks of having to pull in the belt and spend a little less to get your savings up to where it needs to be, because a 5% deposit is quite possible. And even if you have a 5% deposit now and you don't want to wait because the market is moving so much, then getting in and putting mortgage insurance on top of your loan is not the end of the world. It's where I started with a 5% deposit. I bought my first property for $425,000. I used all of the money that I had, $45,000. 25 of that went to stamp duty. I then borrowed 50 grand. I did a renovation, and 9 months later, that property was worth $700,000. So I went from $425,000 to $700,000. I started with a 5% deposit. If I had waited till I had a 10 or 20% deposit, it would have been 3 or 4 or 5 years later, and I wouldn't be buying the equivalent property that was worth $475 or $425 then. It would have been more like $350. So no, it's an opportunity cost. So don't be scared about paying mortgage insurance. It allows you to get into the market, and especially in this growth market at the moment, if you have the ability to get in now and not wait and take your chances of being one of the 10,000 that does get that first home loan deposit scheme, then I really encourage you to find out what you can do to start it now. But remember, where you buy is critical. No units and nothing new. Now, freeze your credit card. This is a little trick that I know numerous people have done, and that's just put the credit card in some plastic and then put it in another bag and put water in the other bag, so you're not actually freezing your actual credit card. And if you find something you want to buy, you have to defrost it first. You have to think about what you're doing. This is really important when it comes to making purchases and looking at what your expenses are, is what are you actually spending your money on? And take a step back and put the money that you save in savings. I remember a workmate that I used to have, and we used to drive all over town for him to get the cheapest petrol. And at the end of the day, he'd get the cheapest petrol and he'd go, yay, I got the cheapest petrol. And he'd be 2 cents off or something. That money never went into his savings. That money just went back into his wallet. So if you are saving money, write down in that workbook after you've done your expenditure analysis is what you could have spent and what you've saved, and put that money into a savings account. And if you have to, separate your savings account from your everyday account. Now, a lot of lenders these days allow you to do that, and potentially there can be fees associated. So I really encourage you to check that out. And also look at the discounts that are available on things. So, I always think that education is an investment. And I know when I started off, I used to buy all the books, should have gone to the library, on property. And I have many, many books in my library on property, over 130 of them. And, it got to the stage where I was like, I didn't know who to trust, but it was an education process, and I really appreciated that. And then I tried to start doing, some of the free courses, and I, worried about the free courses of where they really trustworthy. And then I started got to the point where I could pay for courses and pay for education. And, I never would think that that is something that's a waste of money, especially if it gets you to your goals. Now, obviously, I've just offered you a course that's usually worth $4.95 for free, so there is an opportunity to have good quality education for free. But what I would really encourage you to think about, and it happened when I was recovering from surgery recently, and I spent some time in hospital talking to nurses, and I spoke to this one nurse about investing, and she said, oh my gosh, we were so lucky, we found this group in town and they found us the property, they got us the loan, they found us the property manager as well. We got completely set up, and they did get set up because that person got money off the developer for the property. The person possibly got paid a referral fee from the mortgage broker, and they probably got a referral fee from the property manager. They might even have that all in-house. Now, not everyone's bad, but if it seems too good to be true, it possibly is. And as we know, what's happened with a lot of units, I know speaking to valuers in Sydney and Melbourne, more than 60% of the value of the exchange price and what they've actually had to pay at settlement of the value of the property has come down. So they might have paid $375 for the property, and when they've come to actually settle on the property, the off-the-plan property, a year later, it's only worth $325. And we don't want this to happen to you. We want to shortcut all of the bad experiences that we've seen. So many people make, why am I saying we, me? I've seen people make, and it's often to do with buying off-the-plan properties, house and land, or in big estates where you can't add any value and you're really sanctioned by what you can do, and going to a one-stop shop that is actually not giving you everything that you need. So I think that I've probably been talking for a long time here, but I want to make sure that you understand the value of this information. First and foremost, there is money that is being thrown out at the moment from the government through concessions and through stamp duty, and in the future through the first home loan deposit scheme. There's 3 ways that you can get the money. And as I showed you a bit earlier, up to $60,000 in savings if you are eligible and you're buying under the cap and all of those things for the first home loan deposit scheme. So there's incredible dollars on the table at the moment. The other thing is, even if you you don't qualify for that. If you have a 5% deposit, we're working with lenders right now who are taking 5% deposits and putting the mortgage insurance on top of that for people. Maybe you have a parent who has property that you can get a parental guarantee. If you do, head over and have a look at my education segment in the First House Buyer Facebook page, where I talk about that and understanding how that works. So there's ways that you can get into the market now, or use the first home loan deposit scheme when it comes out in the 1st of 1st. Now we have less than 8 weeks until that date, so I really want you to be set up right. Now some of the things that you may not know that lenders do, you don't necessarily need to have that deposit in cash. If you've been renting, some lenders actually look at the money that you've spent in renting over the last 3 to 6 months, and they consider that your genuine savings. So there's all of these little shortcuts and little things and nuances that can come into play for you. There's other lenders that are actually throwing money at the moment to get their clients, get more clients in the door. Now, first home buyers have become really active. It's no secret that investors have, really taken a bit of a back seat in the last couple of years. Well, let me just tell you, they are full on back and the market is moving. And we're going to see the banks are going to start seeing the investor number of loans increasing. But the first home buyers are still really attractive. I spoke to one of our representatives from one of the major lenders last week who said that they are doing so many pre-approval applications or home seeker applications that don't actually convert into a loan, that they're actually looking at introducing a program that they're going to pay you, I think $750 if you actually go forward with the loan. So there's all of these different things out there. There's a lot of money that is on the table at the moment that you may not be aware that you have access to. And there's ways that you can increase your income. So when you do that servicing capacity, and please, as I said when I showed you the steps to go through with our 5-step financial freedom framework, we're talking about set it here. We're trying to understand how much you can afford to buy, and so that we can move on to source it next and have a look where you can actually spend that money. But the really important thing is understanding the process. And, we're more than happy to do that assessment for you and work out what your borrowing capacity is. If you, as I said, I put together the first home buyer course just to give people an extra hand to assist you. And that course did retail for $495 when it's available. It's been completely redone now, and you make an appointment with us at Investors Choice. As I said, the link will be above soon. Then we'll give, and you come and have an interview with one of my team, and we can work out some numbers for you. We'll give you access to that course straight away. But please work through it, because there is a process, and knowing how much money you need, it might be less than you think. So just be aware what's available. And the other thing is, if you can increase your income, and it might just be so that you can increase your deposit. So it could just be getting on Airtasker, or getting on, Clarity.fm, or, selling things on Gumtree or on the Facebook community page or whatever. Getting that extra money is going to boost up your deposit. So there's other ways than saving. Go and use the Investors Choice portfolio calculator, work out how much you actually need to live off, and then work out how much you actually earn, and the difference there could be your savings that you're actually spending without even knowing it. So that's why I really encourage you to go and get that book. So many things that we've covered today. Let's do an absolute speedy recap. First and foremost, there is money on the table. There's over $60,000 if you're eligible that the banks and government are going to give you access to, and it means that you can actually get into your first property sooner at a lower price than you even thought, and you may be able to do that with just a 5% deposit. So know what you can afford. And what can you afford? Well, get a mortgage broker to go and find out what your income and expenses look like, so that you can understand what lenders will lend you. Once you understand that, then we take into account your deposit, because you could be limited by what you can afford to buy, or you could be limited by your deposit. Usually people are limited by one of those things. So understand where your limitation is so that you can work on it. If your limitation is your servicing, now let's talk about how to increase your income. How do you increase your income? Well, maybe ask for a pay rise, maybe do some extra shifts, maybe find some extra work, maybe get paid for things that you're really, really good at and you're just giving away. Find out maybe on Clarity.fm, maybe on Airtasker, where you can actually make some extra bucks that can go into your deposit as well. So get your income up and reduce your expenses. So how can you reduce your expenses? Work out what you're actually spending your money on. So get a book and write it down for the next 2 weeks. I'm sure you'll be surprised. And look at where you're spending your money. Look at the marketing that is going on every single day. Maybe you're picking up that extra chocolate when you're at the petrol station. Maybe you're going out for dinner with your friends and family. Let's bring back the progressive dinner or the potluck dinner. Let's bring it back and save some money. Maybe get rid of that Netflix subscription. Maybe get rid of the gym subscription. There's so many great gym and even on YouTube, really great workouts you can do. But check out the Nike one. It's a great free app with great workouts on it. So there's ways you can reduce your expenses as well. That's going to affect your borrowing capacity. And if you would like us to do that for you at Investor's Choice, more than happy to. We'll do that assessment for you. And if you make an appointment with the link that I have, which is investorschoice.com.au/bookings, I will get you that course worth $495 for our first home buyers. There's over 30 modules in it, lots of exercises. As I said, I've had that on the market for $495. I'm only giving it to my first home buyers that I'm working with here at the moment. So, you don't have to pay for education too. You could actually come up with a really good way of actually getting it for free. So look at what you can get for free. There's free activities happening all the time in the city. Understand where you're spending your money and see what the alternative is. Rather than buying a book, go to the library. You can actually download with their apps all of the electronic books. You don't even have to go to the library these days except to join. And then look at your savings. If you are saving money, put it in a savings account. Don't just leave it in your wallet because you're going to spend it. Increasing your savings is actually really easy when you put your mind to it. But first and foremost, you have to know how much you need to save. So that's the speedy recap. There is money on the table. Increase your income, reduce your expenses, increase your deposit, and you can be one of the people who can get into your first home even sooner than you thought, for even less than you even thought possible. That's it for me. That's it for this week. I hope you guys have had a really good time. And without further ado, I'm going to throw you over to the exit credits. Have a great week. Speak to you next week, 12:30 on Wednesday.
And that's it for this week's First Home Buyers Show. And Jane will be back next time with more tips, tricks, resources and interviews.
See you then.